watched me come unsure and slow. He watched the water rise and flow. He watched me finally turn to go. Then he said, "Give me a drink." How could you, a Jew, a man, accept a drink from my own hand? A woman and a Samaritan, you really are a strange one. Woman, if you only knew exactly who you're talking to, then you'd ask me, and I'd give to you the true and living water. Where is your bucket, sir? You've nothing here to fill. This well is Jacob's legacy, who dug it for his family. Are you a greater man than he to claim this living water? The water that I offer you is a wellspring full and free. Come and drink, and you will thirst no more. Come and drink, and live in me. Let's have this water, sir, this water full and free, so I won't have to sweat and strain and toil across this dusty plain. So make it shower, pour, and rain, and there's no more thirst for me. Go and bring your husband here. There's no husband home to bring. You speak the truth. You have no husband. You have had 5, and the one you have is not your own. You are alone. You speak the truth. You speak the truth. I thought he talked of water, but he spoke to me of life, and a spring leaped up, embracing me as a woman, daughter, wife. I know when the Messiah comes, all things will be clear. I am the one you look for, the one you seek is here.
The woman left her water jug and returned to the village. She gathered all the townspeople to her and said to them,
Come and see, a man who told me everything I have ever done. Could he be the one we long for? Could he be the Messiah? You give to water of life to all who are thirsty, all those who seek to abide in you. O spring of your Spirit, dwell in our hearts and give us the living water.
Let us have a minute of silence. Let us pray. Holy One, the music has carried us to the well. Open our ears and our hearts to what was released there, the living water that cannot be contained, that moves through every crack it finds. Give us courage for what it asks of us this morning. She came to the well alone in the heat of the day when no one else would be there. The sun high, dust rising from the path, and the stone rim of the well warm beneath her hands. And she found him waiting, a Jewish man in Samaria, speaking to her. Every social convention of their time said that this should not happen. And yet there they were. What was set in motion between them in that unlikely, unbidden encounter is what this morning is about. And I don't think it was an accident that this happened, and it wasn't just about them. Let's stay there for a moment at the well and look carefully at what Jesus did. Jesus didn't stumble into this encounter. He walked toward it. Jews didn't travel through Samaria. They went around it, around the history and the animosity, around the complexity of a people who are too similar to ignore and too different by every social convention to engage. It added miles to the journey, but it avoided a lot of uncomfortable conversations. But Jesus went through. And when he arrived at the well and found a Samaritan woman there, he crossed not one social boundary, but many. Gender, a man speaking publicly with a woman who was not his kin. Ethnicity, two peoples who had avoided each other for centuries. Religion, two communities who worshiped the same God and insisted that the other was doing it wrong. And still, he sat down and asked her for a drink of water. He made himself the one who needed something. And that gesture alone, a Jewish man asking a Samaritan woman for help, would have turned heads. But then they talked, really talked, and she pushed back. She named the differences between them directly, and he didn't flinch or retreat. When they hit theological disagreement, which didn't take long, her people worship here, your people worship there, whose tradition is right? He didn't declare a winner. He moved through it to something bigger. The Spirit moves where it will. It is not the property of any single tradition. And she didn't receive any of this passively. She interrogated Jesus at every turn. Ephraim the Syrian, a 4th century theologian who wrote in Aramaic, the same language Jesus spoke, placed the Samaritan woman right alongside Mary and called her the first to announce the Messiah, before even the apostles. And she is the only person in John's gospel who draws out of Jesus the fullest of his self-disclosure. Not the disciples, not the religious authorities, but this woman, the woman at the well on this ordinary afternoon. She is the theologian, and he met her as one. Something was freed in that exchange, freed in her, and perhaps freed in him also. And this claim is worth sitting with, because it shows that Jesus learned from outside the boundaries of his own people. This woman, this outsider, expanded his understanding of where the sacred moves. What passed between them wasn't something that could be contained or carried in a jar. It had to move. She left her water jar at the well, went back to her community, and said, "Come and see." And they came, and the living water flowed. I want to call what Jesus did at the well a spiritual practice, one we might call bridging. But before I try to describe it, let me tell you about a movement I was part of in my working life that showed me what this spiritual practice looks like when it is sustained across decades, at scale, and against enormous odds. In my early 20s, I found my way to the Chemical Weapons Working Group, a project of the Kentucky Environmental Foundation, where I worked as a fundraiser, a community organizer, and a paralegal assistant. My boss was Craig Williams, and Craig was a Vietnam veteran, also the recipient of the Goldman Environmental Prize and co-recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Craig led a 25-year national movement to ensure that the U.S. chemical weapons stockpile was destroyed safely, not by incineration, which was the military's original plan, and which was dangerous and deeply alarming to the communities living near the 9 stockpiles of chemical weapons. What Craig built over those 25 years was a coalition that should not have been possible. Environmental activists and Pentagon officials, military contractors and grassroots neighbors, people who began in the late 80s as adversaries, by the late 90s were sitting at the same table working toward a shared solution in Washington, D.C. And the most striking example, Craig, who would describe himself as a flaming lefty, built a genuine working relationship with Senator Mitch McConnell. Because McConnell eventually understood that incineration was inefficient, dangerous, and bad for Kentucky citizens and the environment. It was not agreement on everything. It is not abandoning where we stand, but it is finding the shared ground that makes the impossible possible. The last chemical weapon was destroyed in 2023. 25 years of unlikely partnership got it done. And I was changed. I was changed by being close to this process. I went in carrying assumptions I didn't even know I had about who could work with whom, about which divides were too deep to cross, about what becomes possible when people who disagree on almost everything find one thing they care about enough to work toward together. I came out knowing that the impossible is mostly just the unbridged. What I saw there is something human beings have been trying to name for eons. Bridging is not a soft word. It is not a naive one. And the Jewish philosopher Martin Buber spent his life trying to name what I watched Craig build. And he did it in community. It took everybody. And it is what I believe Jesus practiced at the well. Martin Buber said that human beings relate to each other in one of two ways. In what he called I-it, the other person becomes a category, a type, a label, a problem to be managed, or a position to be defeated. And we are surrounded by I-it right now. It is the default language of our politics, of our media, of our religion, of our social lives. But Buber described another possibility, which he called I-thou. The moment when we refuse to reduce another person to a category and meet them instead as a whole, irreducible human being. In an I-thou encounter, people are changed. And Buber believed that in those moments, in that charged space between two people who truly meet, the eternal breaks through, the divine breaks in, and the living water flows. Now think of an actual bridge. Two land masses, they're distinct, they're solid, neither one is dissolved or diminished by the other, and the bridge doesn't erase the differences between them. Rather, it honors and spans them. And you cannot build a bridge from nowhere. You have to know exactly where you stand. Your convictions, your rootedness are not an obstacle to bridging. They are a requirement for it. They are the very ground from which the bridge is built. That is what Jesus did at the well, and what Craig did over 25 years in Kentucky. And it is what I am asking us to consider here and now in our own lives, because we are a deeply, deliberately divided people, and we are, whether we choose it or not, and always will be, completely interdependent on each other. We need each other. And not in a sentimental way, but in our literal survival depends on our interdependence. And on another deeper level, in the way that Buber understood, we become most fully ourselves only in genuine encounter with another. I-it doesn't just divide us, it diminishes us and makes us smaller. We are made, we are born for I-thou. And here is the theological claim I would like to leave at the center of this sermon. The living water is not a reward that comes after bridging. It is what the bridging itself releases. It was always already there, waiting in the encounter, in the charged space between two people willing to cross the divide and truly meet. That is where the holy lives, not in the jar, but in the crossing. The poet Edwin Markham put in 4 lines what I've been trying to say for 15 minutes. He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. He drew a circle that took him in. So what does this mean for us here in this room? Before we can reach across any divide, we have to know our own ground. And then we look up and ask, where is the divide that I have been walking around? For some of us, it is political, racial. For some of us, it is the family member we stopped calling, or the neighbor we stopped waving to, or the colleague whose worldview feels so foreign, we have simply stopped trying. And families are often the hardest place to practice this. The people who love us most also know exactly where to find our tender places. They know which words will land like a match on dry grass. And if the Thanksgiving table or equivalent feels impossible right now, you are not failing. You are human. And it may be that the place to begin is somewhere you have a little more room to breathe, with someone where the stakes are lower. Because bridging is a practice, and we get better at it with practice. And here is what I have found. It's not depleting. Done with intention, it is one of the most energizing things that we can do, because something comes alive in us when we refuse the script that says, those people are beyond reach. When we sit down at the well anyway and begin. We are not doing it alone because we have each other. We have this community. And we have available to us at every moment the same living water that sent the woman running back to her neighbors with nothing in her hands and everything in her heart. She left her water jar at the well. She came for water and left without it because what she received couldn't be carried in a jar. What she carried was nothing less than the holy. The holy that cannot be contained. It spills and spreads and finds the cracks and moves through them. We heard her story this morning in music, and now we carry it. And so the question she leaves us with is simple, but is not easy. Where is your well? Who is waiting there that every convention tells you to walk past? And are you willing? Are we willing? Am I willing to sit down anyway and begin? Amen.